Hi, sweet Elizabeth.
So today's yoga question. I recently read an article that 1.5 million Germans are addicted to sleeping pills. What can restorative yoga offer for people struggling with sleep problems?
Well, I've read a quote recently that said tiredness has become the most suppressed feeling in the world.
Mm.
And I liked that because I tend to agree with it. I certainly agree with it in my own life and in virtually everyone I talk to. So there is a problem with sleeping, and I believe that it springs from devaluing sleep
Mm-hmm.
and believing it's something that we can just push through, not having enough sleep. And so there's an attitude that, because it's such a multifaceted problem, there's an attitude somehow, and I think you'll relate to this perhaps, that we tend to value ourselves by what we produce.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't value ourselves intrinsically, and we believe that somehow, if I at the end of the day, quote unquote, got everything done, produced X or Y or Z, that means I'm having a productive life.
Mm-hmm.
We have the belief secondarily that my life must have meaning if I'm busy. So we tend to fill up our life, our iCal.
Hmm.
And that when it's filled up, well, therefore I'm busy. It must have meaning. It must be important. And I think we get mixed up around issues like that.
Yeah, because sleeping doesn't look like doing anything.
So it's very interesting. The other thing that we tend not to do in sort of Western cultures, we're we're completely cut off often, or very much cut off from natural rhythms. We eat strawberries in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
Darkness doesn't limit us. Uh, Temperature doesn't limit us. Uh, Distance doesn't limit us because we have the internet, or we can jump on a plane. And, you get on a plane in New York City and you fly 6 hours to San Francisco and you watch a movie and someone gives you food, well, quote unquote,
Hmm.
someone attempts to feed you,
Hmm.
and you get to San Francisco in 6 hours and your hair isn't even messed up. And it wasn't that long ago that people left St. Louis going, what? They took them a year to walk across the country. They walked.
Mm-hmm.
They were they had a rhythm, and luckily they had no jet lag, which is probably worth walking. So we're not limited. We're not limited by nature in many ways. And we almost have the attitude that nature intrudes upon us.
Mm-hmm.
And I can go downstairs in my garage, get in my car. It's pouring down rain, which is California's version of bad weather. And I can go, except now we are craving rain because of the drought. But I can go downstairs, get in my car. It's pouring down rain outside. I can drive comfortably while I listen to, Taylor Swift on the radio or whatever I'm listening to, and Krishna Das chanting. And I can go to Whole Foods and I can go into their garage and get out and go in Whole Foods and buy my food, which is all presented beautifully there for me. And the whole thing happens in reverse. So, and I get home, I'm not even wet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to go forage it. I don't have to go pull it out of a garden. I mean, we're very disconnected from nature. And so what that means is because we are animals, mammals, we are natural beings, we're disconnected with our own bodily rhythms.
Mm-hmm.
For how many thousands of years did human beings go to sleep when it got dark and woke up when it got light? Because that's all we could do. And that's embedded in ourselves. We don't eat when we're hungry because it's not the right hour, or we're not hungry, but we eat anyway because everyone else is eating. We stay up irregular hours. We eat foods that are out of season, they don't even grow 1,000 miles from where we live. We're just out of sync in many, many ways with light, with rhythm, natural human rhythms, our rhythms. In civilized countries, they take siestas in the afternoon, and scientists will tell us that there's a 24-hour rhythm in the body, and there is a postprandial dip. There is a time biologically where our rhythms slow down in the afternoon, and everybody feels that. And that's where people go at 3 o'clock for a latte. Hype ourselves up with caffeine and sugar, because what we really need to do is go lie down. So if I may continue for a moment more on this, I think it's important that we understand physiologically the difference between rest and sleep. Would you like to talk about that?
Yes.
Okay, so they are on the same side of the continuum physiologically, but they are not interchangeable. Because I think we've all had the experience of sleeping a sufficient amount of hours, which, according to scientists, is between 8 and 10 for human adults in 24 hours, not necessarily all at once. But 6 hours is usually not enough. And people even say that. They say, I can get by on 6 hours. It doesn't mean I can thrive. So we can sleep. And like I said, I think we've all had this experience. And wake up and not be rested.
Yeah.
So sleep and rest are not the same. Rest is an important part of our health. And so when we rest, we help to prepare the body for sleep. And that's another thing. We have terrible sleep hygiene. Like, we stay up, I find that if I stay up, till 11, I get the dreaded second wind. Like, I'll start getting sleepy often at 9:30 or 10 or 10:15. I'm sleepy. But if I can just, quote unquote, push through that and stay up to 11, and then I've got the dreaded second wind, and I can stay up till 2. Because it's not the right rhythms. I'm out of sync with my rhythms. And Ayurveda, the science of medicine from India, talks about basically go to bed by 10, get up by 6, to go along with the whole rhythms of our doshas and how our body is set to work. And scientists will tell you the best sleep you get is before midnight. So we don't have good sleep hygiene. We don't disconnect from bright light. And that's my conundrum with e-readers, because I love to read in bed, and I try to turn the light on the reader down, and because light is a great stimulus to the cortex. That's what wakes us up when the light. I mean, I've woken up. Maybe you've had this experience at night when the moon is full and it's shining in my room, and it wakes me up. So we need to disconnect from all electronics. We need to disconnect from stimulating activity. We need not to eat late at night. We need to do those things that are good sleep hygiene. Maybe do a restorative yoga pose before we get in bed. So we need rest every day. We need to lie down and rest. I know my grandfather was a farmer and a carpenter, and your grandmother, my great grandfather, I'm sorry. No, my grandfather, your great grandfather. So the girls, quote unquote, would stay in the kitchen and be helping their mother, my grandmother, cook lunch, because they came in from the fields to work, and they would have food they didn't have very much money at all. So they had a cow, and they had fresh milk and things like that, and they grew a lot of their own vegetables. So they'd go pick the corn and cook it, or the potatoes or whatever, for a few minutes later to eat. And then my grandfather would come in, and he would go lie down, no air conditioning, lie down on the floor by the fan, pull his cowboy hat over his head and say, I'm going to take me a little lie down. And he would rest for 20 minutes, which we might call shavasana. He would have the second part of his day, and it was hot, and it got them out of the heat and helped him digest his food and helped him rest and relax. And this is a very normal human activity. And since the industrialization era in human history, we are now cogs in the industry. So we do the efficient thing, which is work from 9 to 5. But if you look at indigenous cultures, people work, but they also take rest in the daytime. They have a rhythm to it.
So what do we get from rest that we don't get from sleep?
Sleep is a time that there are actual, and there's a lot of research on this now, biochemical processes of the brain sorting out its experiences, and there's a certain understanding now that it's quote unquote cleaning itself out. And that requires a certain form of brainwaves. You need to go, there are brainwaves which accompany sleep and dreamless sleep, and all of those are part of our needs. Resting is like sleep light, but it is important, I think, in our culture for dealing with what we all call stress. And stress is merely overusing the physiological effects of stress are overusing our sympathetic nervous system, our fight or flight nervous system, and that's a little old-fashioned way of saying it these days, but using our adrenal energy from our adrenal glands and other biochemicals to overcome the fatigue that we're not getting with enough and sufficient and healthy sleep. So one of the things that is, I believe, the cause of most of our stress is our perception of time. And most of us say many times a day, there's not enough time. As if time were the culprit. Time is
indifferent.
Time's indifferent, but everyone in the world today has the same amount of time. And it's what we choose to do with it. We think time is something to be filled up instead of something to be savored. And so when we disconnect from this constant pushing mindset and we just lie down for 20 minutes like my grandfather did, we begin to shift, and this is what restorative yoga is a strategy to help us do. We shift into a parasympathetic dominance. And in the way physiologists talk, is that we stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, which sounds funny because it's the one that cools us off, but we give dominance to that. And the parasympathetic nervous system, as you probably know, controls long-term functioning, like growth, repair, digestion, assimilation, fertility, immunity. It controls things that take a long time. And if you look at television, actually, I'm not sure it's true where you are, but it certainly is true where I am in the States, that a lot of advertisements have to do with constipation, diarrhea, headaches, indigestion, many things that are probably extremely related to stress overloads, and overloading the sympathetic nervous system and not taking enough time to be in the parasympathetic nervous system. And there's even studies that I participated in with the National Institute of Health here in the United States that have shown amazing blood chemistry shifts regarding blood sugar and cholesterol, what we call the bad cholesterol, the low density ones, over a period of time with the consistent practice of relaxation techniques. So just because you sleep doesn't mean you relax. You can be agitated in your sleep. So the point is we need to rest every day for 20 minutes, and that will help us sleep. And probably one of the most profound physiological facts of why we need to disengage from our stress every day is this. There is a tremendous amount of anxiety in modern society. And I don't know the exact numbers. It's certainly my subjective experience grading hundreds and hundreds of reports for people who've studied with me to be. relax and renew trainers and to teach restorative yoga and their clientele, the information on their clientele that they submit. But I'm not doubting that this is true, that there are a lot of people on anti-anxiety medication. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not telling people not to do that. I'm merely noting this and wanting to add this fact to that mix. You cannot be anxious and relaxed at the same time. So part of what the benefit is of once a day disconnecting, doing 20 minutes of resting, is when you rest and you evoke that parasympathetic non-stress state biochemically in your body, you are not anxious. When you come out of a good shavasana, a good relaxation, you are not anxious. You cannot be anxious and relaxed at the same time. So I can't help but feel that this is a good strategy to put in the mix of helping people be less anxious. And anxiety is one of the reasons people wake up in the night. There's the insomnia of waking up in the night is usually because your unconscious mind is spinning with something you're anxious about. And the other kind of insomnia is the inability to go to sleep. But once you go, it takes you a long time, but once you go to sleep, you sleep okay. So that's another reason that we need to learn relaxation techniques. I think we've mentioned it in one of our talks. When I took my first yoga class, I fell in love, and I had a state, as we've said, of recognition, of some deep recognition of this practice, of the sacredness and importance of this practice. But I hated shavasana. I'm like mentally squirming. Why are we lying there wasting all this time? And it's interesting to note that at the time I had a lot of problems with insomnia. I had problems going to sleep. I had trouble making the transition. And so one of the two reasons that I think actually relaxation is so important in our culture. 3, it feeds the ability to sleep. No, I guess 2. It feeds and teaches us how to go to sleep because it's on the way to that. And it teaches us a technique for doing that. And I know doctors and healthcare people will tell their patients and their clients, go home and relax.
Yeah.
But don't know what that means. It's not vegging out in front of the TV. It's not lying on the couch reading a magazine. That's not what relaxation deeply is about. So it's teaching someone a restorative pose like shavasana and others is teaching them literally what does it feel like. It teaches them you have the power to do this yourself. And then it has, I think, an extremely additionally important function, if I may, which is it teaches people what I believe, and I'm not attempting to be grandiose, I believe this. It is teaching them the most important thing human beings can learn. And that is, it teaches us to disconnect, to disidentify with our thoughts. If you look at the teachings of yoga, Buddhism, and other spiritual paths, it's all about the mind. The practices are about the mind, the asana, the breathing, the meditation, the self-study. It's about creating a different experience, a different relationship we have with thought. And thought is the surface of consciousness. And so I believe what these practices are about is helping us to disidentify with surface agitation of the ocean of thought. And because as long as I believe I am a thought of anger, I am a thought of greed, I am my thoughts, I'm at the mercy of them. So to me, meditation is not about some preternatural calmness in the mind, because the mind makes 60,000 thoughts a day, according to scientists, most of them unconscious. It's about not believing them, not dancing away with them. And that to me is moksha, that is freedom. And so when we teach shavasana, not only do we teach people a technique for relaxing, and we are helping them begin to observe, just like they observe their tension. When we lie down, we observe that our thoughts are spinning.
Yeah.
And most people, when they first discover that, will interpret that as being about shavasana.
Yeah.
And they'll say, I can't do shavasana, quote unquote, it agitates me. And I always smile. I say, no. The mind was already agitated. You just suddenly heard it. And so I think that teaching Shavasana helps people reduce anxiety. It helps them understand how to make transition into sleep. It reduces the stress in all the biochemical ways that we're aware of. But it teaches them a profound lesson. It's the beginning of understanding what meditation is without having to sit in lotus, which many people can't do, or anything fancy. It just shows you, my mind is spinning, and it develops a habit
Mm-hmm.
of observation of my spinning mind. Because that's what insomnia, I believe, is about almost always. I'm sure there could be some other cause of it that's more grounded in the body, but I think it's grounded in the mind. Either we can't let go and fall asleep, or we're exhausted, we fall asleep, but we haven't resolved our anxiety.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful, Mom. Let's end there for today.
Are you going to go take Shavasana now?
I'm going to go teach Shavasana now.
Have I whipped you into a frenzy of excitement to do nothing?
I'm ready to relax, baby.
You're so excited about doing nothing. But it's really, I know you want to end. It's not really about doing nothing. It's about doing self-nurturing. And because when we are de-stressed, our actions and our words leave us some scars in the world, and footprints in the world that make not only our lives and the lives of people who touch us, but it makes the world a better place. So namaste. Teach people to relax. Give them a lot of time in the pose. Don't talk the whole time. Let them find their own true self. Thank you, daughter, for listening and talking with me. Namaste.
Namaste, Mama. If you enjoyed listening to this conversation, you might also like the audio course that my mom and I you might also like the audio course that my mom and I are recording. And the format is really similar to these conversations. It's question and answer, and it's based on the second edition of her book, Living Your Yoga. To find out more, please visit judithhansenlassiter.com.